Welcome to another episode of the SpitBallin podcast. I'm your host, AJ, and alongside me, as always, my co-host, Christian. And on this episode, we will be talking about the NFL draft that occurred in Pittsburgh this weekend. All 3 days were full of excitement, and we will be giving you our grades for each team's draft. We'll be going over who we think were steals of the draft, and especially who we really think were winners and losers of the NFL draft. You can listen to SpitBallin at most places you find your podcasts, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok under the handle at PodSpitBallin. That is at POD Spitballin. And to jump right into it, we will talk about the attendance record that was broken this weekend. We saw Pittsburgh have 805,000 people across all 3 days, which beat the previous record held by Detroit, which was 775,000. So they beat it by 30,000. What do you think this means for the NFL draft heading to Washington, D.C., the capital of the country next year, Christian, as I think it's just going to be an ever-growing event for the NFL?
Yeah, it'll just keep getting more. I mean, NFL gets more popular every year, so it's not surprising.
Yeah, I mean, and it's crazy the jump that they had of 805,000 from the 775,000 in Detroit, because last year in Green Bay, they didn't even come close to the record. So to see Pittsburgh beat it is pretty impressive.
When was Detroit?
Detroit was 2 years ago. So it was Detroit, Green Bay, and now Pittsburgh. So pretty impressive by Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is a football town, really. I mean, obviously they have the Penguins and the Pirates, but the Steelers are that city's heart and soul. So it really does make sense in that sense. And before we jump into each individual team's draft and go over a recap and what we thought, what they did well and what they did wrong, we'll hop into some trades that happened during the draft, as D. Winters was traded to Dallas, from the 49ers for a 5th-round pick. Jonathan Grenard was traded to the Eagles from the Vikings for a 3rd, a 7th, and a 2027 3rd-round pick. And Tyrese Wilson, a former first round pick, was traded to Vegas from the Saints with a 7th-round pick, and the Saints got a 5th-round pick back. What do you think about these trades, Christian? I think a lot of high upside for the teams that acquired the players, in my opinion, as they really did not give up much value.
I think it just shows that Howie Roseman is still the best GM in sports. It's kind of crazy the value he gets on players. Like Jonathan Grenard, he had kind of a down year last year, but he's been elite the 2 years before that. So getting him for 2/3, that's unreal value. D. Winters, he hasn't been really as good as he once was. Tyrese Wilson, it was a terrible pick when it happened. I'm surprised they even got a 5th for him, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Jonathan Grenard being the guy who sticks out here besides the other two who exactly have been pretty disappointing throughout their careers. But we'll see. I think Tyrese Wilson definitely should not have been a 1st-round pick, but he was. So I look at it for Vegas, it's just a high upside trade. They gave up a 5th-round pick and even got a 7th back. And then Jonathan Grenard, I mean, had a down year, but 2/3 for a guy that was a top 10, maybe you could say 15 edge rusher the year prior to last year.
He was elite.
Is very insane. And I mean, you now bring him to Philly, who was in desperate need of an edge rusher, and they got it now. So I definitely think some interesting trades happening at the draft. Very interesting that they were all edge rushers to be traded. And before we hop right into our first division, we're going to go over a couple UDFAs that made headlines after being signed or invited to mini camps. The biggest one, obviously, is Diego Pavia, who was a Heisman finalist and is the first Heisman finalist since 2014 to have not been drafted. He did get an invite, though, to Ravens minicamp, and we'll see how that pans out. I just think the way he carries himself, the kind of who he thinks he is just not going to really help him in the NFL. If he can drop that and really just focus in on football, obviously he already has the height disadvantage, so I just don't think he will really make it in the NFL, but you're always rooting for a guy. You don't want to see a guy's career fail, so hopefully he'll be able to find his way into a backup role, maybe on the Ravens or another team. We then also saw Deontay Lawson, who really shockingly fell out of this draft. Honestly, a guy that could have gone, my opinion, in the 3rd or any round even later than that. And he ends up being UDFA and signs to the Eagles. And as Christian just said, another Howie Roseman masterclass, in my opinion. This guy, Deontay Lawson, playing with Zach Bond could be just insane. It could be a great mentor for him. and they could have gotten the steal in the draft after the draft.
Yeah, that surprised me. He was the Bama green dot the past 2 years. Like
Yeah,
Bama's obviously not the same team, but he was really good last year.
yeah, very shocking that he went undrafted. The fact that he wasn't even a seventh round pick is very crazy. And then Tommy Castellanos, who the fact he wasn't drafted is really not that crazy. Very just down year this year compared to how exciting he was the year prior. And we're seeing him possibly become a receiver. He might convert to receiver, like you could say Denard Robinson. And he was invited to some mini camps, I think the Dolphins being one of them, and we'll see how his career pans out. But hopping in now to our first team of our NFL draft recap, we have the Arizona Cardinals here, who we obviously all know who they picked in the first round, Jeremiah Love. We then saw them take Chase Besantis, Carson Beck, Caleb Proctor, Reggie Virgil, Carson Schauer, and Jaden Williams. We're not going to talk about each individual draft pick because obviously we know most people don't really care probably about, let's say, Carson Schauer out of Iowa, who was their sixth round pick. Now that I said that, we all know he's going to be a Hall of Famer. But realistically, Jeremiah Love is the big draft pick here. And you could also say Carson Beck. I think Jeremiah Love, it is exactly basically what the Giants did with taking Saquon Barkley the year they took him. It's the exciting pick. It's definitely a need on their team as well, with James Conner coming off an injury and just probably towards the end of his career, and Trey Benson and Michael Carter just not being good. It's definitely a need, but not their biggest need. And he'll be great for fantasy. We'll see this guy go in first rounds in all fantasy leagues across the country. And I think he'll have a great year for the Cardinals. It'll be very exciting to see him play, but definitely just not probably the right pick. And we'll see him probably end up on another team after his rookie contract and be very good on that team because it'll be a team that has a lot more talent around him. And then Carson Beck. Carson Beck made it to the national championship, obviously lost to Indiana there, but had a very good year after transferring from Georgia. I think, honestly, it's a great high upside pick for the Cardinals. With Jacoby Brissett's contract situation in the air, we really could see Carson Beck start day one, which would be a very interesting change for the Cardinals. Obviously going from Kyler Murray and then, I guess, Jacoby Brissett, you could say, for the latter half of last year to now a new rookie quarterback. I think Carson Beck hopefully could succeed. I think you have decent weapons there in Marvin Harrison, Michael Wilson, now Jeremiah Love and Trey McBride. It's really just that O-line, which is where a lot of people expected them to go in the first round. So what do you think about their draft so far? Or not so far, I guess. Just what do you think about their draft after the draft is over now? I'd give it personally, I'd give it a C. I would go C.
It's surprisingly not that bad. I agree with the C. I'm a lot higher on Carson Beck. I always have been since he's been at Georgia. I mean, the throws he makes, I've always thought were NFL throws. Obviously, the national championship didn't play that great. Jeremiah Love, like you said, it's an exciting pick. It makes no sense for a team that's practically rebuilding their whole team. So, I mean, C is probably the right. Even C minus after now that I'm talking right now. Yeah.
Yeah, and to be honest, exactly, a team that just was not ready for a running back like that, you even just see before the draft, there was a lot of reports saying that they were going to take Jeremiah Love, and a lot of people thought it was smoke because
I thought it was smokescreen.
Yeah, exactly what you just said. People thought it was smokescreen. It was the Giants and the Titans were going to take him, so that's why people thought the Cardinals were saying this, just so then the Giants or Titans would have to trade up and then the Cardinals could make some future value. But they ended up sticking and picking him, and right there we give them a C and C minus. And heading to their, not division rival, I would say, to be honest, I don't think it's that big of a rivalry, but division, Los Angeles Rams. I don't even, before I even go through the picks, I'm going to give it my opinion. I want to go C minus here, but I'm going to go with a D, I think.
Wow.
We'll go through it. Ty Simpson, Max Clare, Keegan Tross, CJ Daniels, and Tim Keenan III. I give it the D grade purely off of you have the reigning MVP on your team, a player who obviously we spoke about Puka heading into rehab in our last episode. Hopefully he is good to go by the time the season comes and gets through his battles. But my point, Puka Nacua, who was basically second in Offensive Player of the Year voting, Devontae Adams, who showed he still has it and that the Jets and Raiders just are horrible organizations, and a defense that really showed up a lot more than I would say, were expected to, and now just added Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson in the offseason. You got to go all in on Matthew Stafford at this point, in my opinion. Obviously, yes, you have to build for your future, and it's important to do that. So if I'm the Rams, I look at this pick 13. If you were going to go with Ty Simpson to say we're building the future, Stafford's probably got 1, maybe 2 more years left, you should have traded out of that pick. Ty Simpson would have been there at pick 32. Maybe the Cardinals take him if they trade back in or something, or maybe even the Jets later. So let's say trade down to pick 15. Go down 2 spots at least. You could still get value. You're ahead of the Jets. I just think picking him over Mekhi Lemon, who really could have came in and produced for you, a guy like Kenyon Sadiq was even still on the board. I just think it was a pick that just really, and you saw it on Sean McVay's face if you guys have seen these video clips that have been all over Twitter about how pissed off he looks about this pick. It looked like Les Snead did a favor for one of his childhood best friends, who was Ty Simpson's dad. And I don't know. I really hope he does succeed. He did, my opinion, make, as you said with Carson Beck, NFL-like throws during his college career, especially this year at Bama. I just don't think he was worth pick 13. And let's say the Rams end up back kind of where they were last year in the NFC Conference Championship, and they lose again. A lot of fingers will be pointing at, wow, I wonder what would have happened if we had somebody on defense or offense that was actually on the field with a pick that we weren't supposed to have, obviously that being the trade with the Falcons they made last year.
Look, I completely disagree with you. I mean, there's a lot of people that are saying it's a bad pick. In retrospect, it probably is, but you got to think of it as, like the trading back scenario. You got to know, if you do your due diligence on a guy and they're there, you're gonna take them. This isn't Madden. There's no way of knowing that if you trade back 10 picks, he'll still be there. We don't know what's going to happen. And Ty Simpson, I mean, I think he's an NFL quarterback. If he started day one, I don't think he'd be that great. But he's sitting behind an MVP for probably two. I think Stafford probably has 2 years left. For 2 years. So the Rams are going to be good for the next 10 years if this pans out, which most times it does. And then the rest of the draft, I mean, I'll give it a C, but the Les Snead knows how to draft. I mean, multiple stars in their teams are 5th-round picks, so I'm going to take it with a grain of salt. But I don't think it's as bad as people are making out to be.
I will agree with you on that in the sense of that they're looking out of the future the next 10 years, which I did touch on a little bit. And yeah, I do look at it, as I said, it's a good pick looking for the future. Exactly. You look at Jordan Love, you look at Patrick Mahomes. These guys sat under Alex Smith, Aaron Rodgers. Their careers have panned out, especially Mahomes, obviously, but I'd even say Jordan Love, you take that if you're, let's say, the Jets or the Raiders, who are now going to see if Mendoza can be that. You take a Jordan Love type career from a guy that sat for a year. So I agree that if Ty Simpson sits and ends up being good, this will be looked at as the best pick of their first round, probably. But I don't know. I just think you have to capitalize on your Super Bowl window that you have right now, which is why I still slightly disagree and stay at a D, I would just say, because you really draft Max Clare, even, for example, was drafted as a future tight end, I think, for them, obviously with Tyler Higbee getting up there in age. And Max Clare, though, was pretty decent at Ohio State. And I will say, as you said, that Les Snead does know how to draft and gets late round steals. CJ Daniels out of Miami in the 6th round could be a very interesting receiver for them. He probably, I think, will end up being their 3 guy. I don't think he really has too much competition to worry about. I think Tutu Atwell's still there. I'm not positive on that.
No, it would be Xavier Scott.
But I was going to say Xavier Scott and then even Mumpfeld, I'm pretty sure his name is.
Yeah, he'll probably beat him out.
I think he beat them all, that is my point. So I think he's a solid, that could be their late round steal. But moving on to the Super Bowl champions in their division, the Seattle Seahawks, we saw them take the 2nd Notre Dame running back at the end of the 1st round in Jadarian Price, Bud Clark in the 2nd, Julian Neal, Bo Stevens, Emmanuel Henderson Jr., Andre Fuller, Devin Eastern, and Michael Dansby. For me, I would give them a B. I don't want to go up to an A just because it's not like a, wow, this is a crazy draft class, but I look at it as they replaced Kenneth Walker with Jadarian Price, which a lot of people are hating on, to be honest, online. A lot of people thought it was like, oh, he's the Clyde Edwards-Helaire of this 1st round, where it's like,
that's not true.
Yeah, I really wouldn't say that. Jadarian Price was very good and overshadowed, I would even say, by Jeremiah Love's success at Notre Dame. Jadarian Price with Zach, he's not being drafted to be their bell cow. He's being drafted to be the Kenneth Walker to Zach Charbonnet. And I think he will fit that role perfectly. And Bud Clark in the 2nd round, I think, is a big sleeper at the safety position. At TCU, he was all over the place, playing in the box and playing high up. Bud Clark, I think, will be a perfect replacement for Kobe Bryant on that defense. And that's why I'm sticking at a B here for the Seattle Seahawks.
I agree with everything you said. I'm still going to give it a B minus, solely because taking running backs early are always risky. I know it's pick 32. It's the major need they had to fit. But I'd still give it a slightly less rating. The rest, they just filled needs that they have. So yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah, and moving on to the final team in this division, and to be honest, I think the team that had the worst draft in this division is the San Francisco 49ers. We saw them not pick until the second round. They had the first pick of the second round, and they chose Dejon Stribling out of Ole Miss, Romello Height, Kalian Black, Grayson Halton, Carver Willis, Ephesians Frysock. I definitely didn't pronounce
Ephesians.
that right. Jaden Duggar and Enrique Cruz Jr. I give this draft, honestly, it's not horrible. I said I think in their division it was the worst draft. So I'd give it. I feel like if I gave the Rams a D, I have to honestly go like D minus here.
Wow.
Um, Purely off of they very much reached on Dejon Stribling. He was very good at Ole Miss. Don't get me wrong. He was probably the best receiver at Ole Miss this year. However, they drafted him to be Debo Samuel. If you see how he plays and how Debo played for the Niners, he is the exact same type of guy that you could run out of the backfield. You could run on jet sweeps. He is a guy that can get open on the in routes and is a very shifty guy when he gets the ball in space. However, I think there were better receivers on the board at that point that they could have taken. But for that reason, I kind of want to give him a bit of a higher grade. So maybe I shift my Rams grade a little bit, but I'll stick with the D minus since I'm going to stick with the D with the Rams. And Kalen Black, though, I think the third round is a great pick for them. Obviously, they lost Brian Robinson to the Atlanta Falcons. So Kalen Black, when you saw him at Indiana, he is basically, my opinion, Brian Robinson. You're replacing Brian Robinson with that pick and making sure McCaffrey could still stay healthy, which we saw this year because of Brian Robinson. So I'd give it just though that D minus grade just because I feel like they did reach on a lot of players.
I mean, I'll give them a C. I'm not as stingy on these picks as most people are. I think D is crazy, or D minus is. Are we giving F tier? Are you going to give an F to a team?
We'll see. An F could come around. There's a couple
On
teams.
paper, I will say this looks like the most San Francisco draft I've ever seen. They love taking receivers early, regardless if they have or not. They love taking running backs in the third round every year. They love taking an edge in the second round. You can Google past drafts. They do the same thing every draft. And like I said, the Niners, same team, like I said with the Rams, they know how to draft. So their players usually end up working. So I'll give it a C. Not too high, not too low, though.
Yeah, once again, I really honestly think it was worse than the Rams. So then maybe I will move the Rams up to a C minus and then put them at a D because I agree. I don't think it's a D minus draft. It just I don't think it was
Yeah,
better than the
yeah, I
Rams.
agree.
So I got to maybe just shift the Rams grade up. But
Yeah.
heading to the NFC South now, who a team I think had a great draft, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers start with Ruben Bain in the first round, followed by Josiah Trotter, Ted Hurst, Keon Scott, DeMonte Capehart, Billy Scroff, and Bauer Sharp to round out their draft. I think this is, I'll say, an A minus, to be honest. I think getting Ruben Bain at 15 is the one of the steals of the first round. There's another team later that I really think got the steal of the first round, which we'll get to.
I agree.
And Ruben Bain falling to 15, my personal opinion, you've heard us say it when we've done our mock drafts the past 3 weeks. I think he's the best edge rusher in the entire class. As a pure edge rusher, he was just dominant his whole college career. And if you're just going to be worried about these short arms, and that's literally why he fell, he'll show you on the football field this year in his rookie season that you shouldn't have passed on him. We'll see what happens. And I think Josiah Trotter as their second round pick is a great pick for a guy that's going to come in and hopefully help replace Levante David. So that's why I'm gonna sit there at an A minus.
I'll give it a B plus. Actually, it's mainly because Ruben Bain, I think, is an absolute steal. Like you just said, we always talk about the short arm thing. I don't get it. When you see the production that he did, especially in the playoffs, he had 5.5 sacks in like 3 games, 4 games, which is insane. And then Keontae Scott, I did not expect to fall to the fourth round. Players always fall. Players always rise. Yeah, but it's a very solid draft. B plus. I agree with you.
Yep. And heading to New Orleans, a team that honestly, I think I'm going to say B plus with you, honestly, with the Bucks, because I think I'm going to give this team an A minus because I think they
That's fair.
were better than the Bucks. They took the surprise pick in round 1 with Jordan Tyson at 8. They then got Christian Miller, Oscar Delp, Jeremiah Wright, Bryce Lance, Lorenzo Styles, Barry and Brown, and TJ Hall to round out their draft. I want to say A minus here and move the Bucks down to a B plus just because this is definitely a better draft than the Bucks. I mean, Jordan Tyson was not something we thought they were going to do, but Mansour Delane obviously goes off the board now that the Chiefs traded up, and they said, screw it, we're going to take the best receiver left on the board and make sure Tyler Shuck really has no excuses with weapons. They also then get him my opinion, tight end that could beat out Juwan Johnson in the third round and Oscar Delp. And Christian Miller in the second round, I mean, he's going to be a great guy to put on that D line. And I just think they had a great draft in the sense of you have my opinion, insane wide receiver to now be the number 2 to Chris Olave. And Oscar Delp, a tight end that realistically I think could have gone higher, to be honest. Him going in the third round isn't shocking, but is definitely interesting to me. I thought he would be a late second round pick maybe. And tight ends did go before him, is my point. And I think Oscar Delp was probably one of the better late tight ends to pick. Obviously, we just spoke about Max Clare going to the Rams, and he went in the second round. And I think Oscar Delp honestly had a better college career than Max Clare. So we'll see how he pans out with the Saints. And then my opinion, their biggest steal in this whole draft, I would say, is Barian Brown out of LSU. Barian Brown is one of my opinion, going to be one of the best special teamers, hopefully, in the NFL in the next coming years, hopefully. I just think from pure speed and pure way he just runs when he gets into space, you put this guy at punt returner and kick returner, he can return some kicks for you as a team, and getting him in the 6th round is exactly like a perfect pick to use on a guy like that. Obviously, he might get brought in on some offensive plays, but if he really ends up just being a return man, I think that's a great pick getting him in the 6th round.
I'm very shocked you said that. Not even me being biased. Barry and Brown, I think he fits the mold as a punt returner, kick returner beautifully in the NFL. It kind of replaces what they had in Rashid Shaheed last year. I'm not saying he's nowhere near that, but he has the ability to somewhat get to that level. But overall in the draft, I'm giving it still a B plus. I think it's on par with the Bucks. I don't think it's still one of the top tier classes. I think there's still better classes. Taking Jordan Tyson at 8, I think is very good. They have a wide receiver 2 now. They're trying to build for Tyler Shuck, which makes sense. Kristen Miller, I thought could have went in the 1st round. I think he's a very good defensive tackle. Like you said, Oscar Delp, a really good tight end. He's better than I think he's way better than Max Clare. I'm not even gonna say better. I think he's way better than Max Clare. But a B plus, solid draft.
Yeah, and we'll see if Barian Brown does pan out. I love that comparison to Rashid Shaheed. Exactly. I think that's what they were looking for there in the 6th round, to replace the guy that they lost last year. And heading to Atlanta, to where we saw a family reunion with them picking their first player in the 2nd round, because they did make that trade with the Rams and not have their 1st round pick this year. They get Avian Terrell, though, in the 2nd round, who was projected late 1st round, so I would definitely say it's a huge steal for them. We then see Zachariah Branch as their next pick, Kendall Daniels, and Tero Thompson, Harold Perkins, and Ethan Anawa. Honestly, I almost want to go A minus here as well, but I'm going to go B plus. It's not an A minus just because I feel like I'm saying potential is why I want to go A minus. But Avian Terrell, I mean, the fact he fell to the 2nd round is crazy to me, and he fell kind of to the mid, almost late 2nd round at pick 48. Avian Terrell was amazing next to Jermod McCoy, and that's why I think it was such a good pick. You're not drafting Avian Terrell to be a corner 1. He's going to be playing corner 2 alongside his brother, AJ Terrell. So I think that's a great situation to put him in right away, and I think it'll be a solid corner duo for the foreseeable future for the Falcons. Zachariah Branch in the 3rd round, I think, is one of the bigger wide receiver steals of this draft, and I think you look at the Steelers took Gurmy Bernard in the 2nd round ahead of him. I think we even saw possibly Malachi Fields go before him. I'm not positive, though. I could definitely be wrong on that. I think I am wrong on that.
You are wrong on that.
Zachariah Branch was amazing at Georgia. And for him to fall to the 3rd round, I think is not shocking, because he definitely was not as good as receivers taken ahead of him. But he could have been a late 2nd round or an early 3rd round pick. And he was kind of a mid to late 3rd round pick. So I think that's a solid get for them. And then my opinion, their biggest steal, which is why I almost want to go up to an A minus here, but I will stick at a B plus. The fact that Harold Perkins Jr. out of LSU went round 6, pick 215 is absolutely crazy to me. I am a Steelers fan. I think I've said that a couple times on the podcast. I was begging for them to take him, and they never did, and he goes round 6. I think Harold Perkins is being extremely overlooked after coming off injury this year, not having as great of a season as he did prior years at LSU. I think it's just a guy who was coming off injury, also playing on a not so great LSU team. So how motivated was he realistically? And now you're getting him to the Falcons where he could possibly be your lead linebacker. I think this was a great pick. He was an amazing pass coverage linebacker at LSU and even great rushing the passer when he had to. So that's why I'm gonna stick at B plus here. But if Harold Perkins pans out to be an elite linebacker in the NFL, this is definitely an A minus draft class.
I agree. I'm giving it a B plus. Mostly Avion Terrell. He's gonna be he comes in as like a slot guy, but he could play outside. And obviously with AJ Terrell, it's just, like they said on draft night, they said family ties. Harold Perkins, very shocked he fell that far. He fell that far because of last year didn't play as well, injury. He's also a very small linebacker. He's only 6 foot. That's why he really slipped. But I feel like his elite talent, his elite get off, his elite speed, I feel like warrants at least a third or fourth round pick. I think 6 is crazy value for him. And then Zachariah Branch, not a guy that I'm really that high on. He's more of a gadget guy. He doesn't really run. If you look at the tape, Steve Smith broke it down perfectly. With players like Zachariah Branch, he really only runs screens and end arounds. He doesn't really have a great route tree, but he could be very well in special teams. So honestly, Zachariah Branch could be a lot better than what I'm trashing on him now for. I'm not saying he's terrible, but he's more of gadget more than a pure receiver type. That's why other guys went before him. But I'll give it a B.
Yeah, and rounding out the NFC South with the Carolina Panthers, we see them go Monroe Freeling in the first round, followed by Lee Hunter, Chris Brazzell, Will Lee III, Sam Hecht, Zachy Wheatley, and Jackson Kawach. I give this draft a C+. They took their needs, and Monroe Freeling was a weird pick in a sense that they have 2 tackles, but I think it's kind of looking out for the future, obviously, as I'm pretty sure Taylor Moden is getting up there in age, and realistically, you got to replace him eventually. So I think in that sense, they're looking out for the future by taking Monroe Freeling. And Lee Hunter, though, I think really could be a big steal in this draft. Lee Hunter at Texas Tech really was a great nose tackle, and I think he could be great next to Derek Brown in the NFL because of that.
I'll give him a C. It wasn't anything special. Monroe Freeling, I didn't understand the pick at the time. I guess they're looking for the future to protect Bryce Young. I still thought they would have went receiver, or honestly, Lee Hunter could have been a first-round pick. They could have taken a D lineman. I'll give it a C. It's nothing too crazy, but it's not the worst.
Yeah, and moving on to the NFC North, we see the Minnesota Vikings start their draft with Caleb Banks out of Florida, followed by Jake Galladay, Dominique Orange, Caleb Tiernan, Jacob Thomas, Max Bredson, Charles Demings, Damon Claiborne, and Gavin Gerhardt. I give this draft as well, I'd say a C, C minus. I don't think they really made any exceptional picks. I think Caleb Banks is just what they needed. They needed a guy to clog the middle. Obviously, Jonathan Allen and I think Javon Hargrave was even over there for a year or two of his career. They just haven't been able to get it done for the Vikings. So they're really just taking now a reset at that position and taking a young D lineman that could hopefully clog up the middle for them. And outside of that, really nobody else, in my opinion, who they took really jumps off the board to me. So I'll stick with that C grade. I think their first round pick really carries them.
Yeah, I'm giving him a C minus. Caleb Banks, a freak at Florida, but I feel like at that pick, you got to take Harrison Smith's replacement, Dylan Thieneman. He was right there. You could have taken him. But Caleb Banks, very good player, like you said. He kind of boosts more from a D. And then the other reason why it's C minus, they drafted their starting center in the 7th round. Their center just retired. And you would have thought that they would have replaced him maybe with a second, third, fourth. No, they waited till the 7th round to grab their center. It just didn't really make much sense to me.
Yeah, and agreed with the Dylan Thieneman pick. But as we know, we are not part of the Minnesota Vikings front office. Maybe they know something we don't, that Harrison Smith could be coming back. So that could be why they passed on him. But I do agree, if it is the end for Harrison Smith and the Minnesota Vikings, not taking Dylan Thieneman really does not make sense. But heading to Detroit now, we saw Detroit go with Blake Miller with their first round pick, followed by Derek Moore, Jimmy Rolder, Keith Abney II, Kendrick Law, Skylar Gill Howard, and Tyree West. Honestly, I'm going to go C minus here. I almost want to go D plus, but I'm going to go C minus just because Blake Miller was a huge need and they got him. So I think that's a great pick for them. But after that, I really think they reached on Derek Moore. I think Derek Moore is a pretty solid edge rusher out of Michigan. Could have gone a little bit later, though, in the draft. And then I'm with this grade more or less because then they go Jimmy Rolder, also out of Michigan. And this kind of just seems like were they just trying to keep Michigan guys in Michigan? So I don't really know. Nothing else really after those picks really jump off at me. Besides Keith Abney out of Arizona State is an interesting pick and could actually pan out in the NFL. He was a pretty solid corner for Arizona State. But besides that, really nothing special.
I'll give the Lions a C plus. They filled the need at tackle. A lot of times, mostly it's just if you're filling needs, and they, like you said, Derek Moore's a reach. They still filled the need at edge. They haven't really had much edge help beside Aiden Hutchinson for a while. The Lions, so C plus, and then the rest is just just filling needs.
Yeah, and to be honest, I guess I could maybe move up to a C over a C minus because I agree with the need filled with Jimmy Rolder, obviously losing Alex Anzalone to the Bucks. It's another need filled. So they really went with those first three picks just to fill needs that they lost to free agency. So I will and retirement in the sense of Taylor Decker. So I will maybe move up to a C, but C to C minus is where I'd give them. And heading to there, I mean, obviously the division rival is the Bears and the Packers, but I feel like the Bears are really going to be rivals with everybody now the way that they're playing. We see them go with Dylan Thyman, who we spoke about earlier, in their first round. Then we see Logan Jones, Sam Roosh, Xavier Thomas, Malik Muhammad, Kayshawn Elliott, and Jordan Van Denberg. I give this draft, my opinion, a B plus or a B. I'll stick at a B. But Dylan Thyman, this is a great replacement for Jaquan Brisker. And as we said with Seattle, obviously losing Kobe Bryant, they gained Kobe Bryant, the Bears. Kobe Bryant and Dylan Thyman could be a great safety duo for years to come for that team. Logan Jones, they immediately draft, possibly, obviously, they signed Drew Dalman after losing their center, unless, was Drew Dalman the one who retired? Correct me if I'm wrong. Or did they sign Drew Dalman?
Drew Dalman retired.
So I forgot who they brought in to replace him then, but they bring in Logan Jones to possibly be the replacement to that guy because, realistically, they were not expecting Dalman to retire. So whoever they sign, it's a one-year deal and really a prove-it deal. Logan Jones could now be their starting center of the future. And outside of that, though, I don't think it was really that great of a draft, but I give it that rating purely off of Malik Muhammad, I think in the fourth round out of Texas, and almost like Keith Abney for the Lions. Another guy who, not shocking, he's a fourth round pick, but a guy that could be a lot better than a fourth round pick and was pretty good at Texas.
What was the grade you gave him again? Sorry.
B plus.
Oh, okay. I agree with the B. Taking Dylan Thieneman kind of stole him from the Vikings, like I said before. It's a major need for them at safety after losing Brisker, and they lost Byard, I believe, as well. Logan Jones, he's going to almost compete for the starting job. He's most likely going to get the starting center job. Like you said, Malik Muhammad, I thought he was going to go earlier. Xavier Thomas, though, another LSU guy who is a crazy good special teamer. So that's another guy that they can use for punt, kick return. It's a big need that they were lacking.
Yeah, I'll say Xavier Thomas for special teams could be good. Obviously, though, my opinion was not really great at LSU. Really not a great wide receiver, but maybe could see success as a special team.
He was a good returner. Wasn't that great of a receiver? Though.
Yes, as I said, success at returner. As a receiver, though, very much my opinion.
Well, yeah.
But Garrett Bradbury was the replacement for Drew Dalman, so exactly, Logan Jones now could definitely come in and steal that job. And heading now to their direct division rival, the Packers, who did not have a first-round pick, and their first pick was in the second round. We see them go Brandon Chris McKellen, Dennis Sutton, Jagger Burden, Domani Jackson, and Trey Smack, a place kicker from Florida.
Wow, a kicker.
Yeah. I don't even know. I'd say a C, maybe. I'll stick at C just because I don't think it was a bad draft. But Brandon Sissy, I think, honestly, is not good at all. I think he just showed a lot when he went up against good wide receivers that he wasn't a good corner in college. And then outside of that, really no other name besides maybe Domani Jackson out of Alabama sticks out to me. Domani Jackson, a guy who, though, as well, really showed that he's not a great corner when he has to go up against great players. So I'll stick with a C just because they did take needs, though, in the sense of drafting Brandon Sissy and then Chris McClellan, obviously possibly being their Kenny Clark replacement.
Nothing special here from Green Bay. Like you said, Brandon, I don't even know if that's how you say it.
Yeah,
Sissy,
or Sissy. I really couldn't tell you.
I don't know. He wasn't that great at South Carolina. Being a second-round pick is kind of crazy. Dennis Sutton, another freak from Penn State. Penn State just produces freaks. I don't know if he's going to be anything special. And then Trace Mack. What?
What do you mean by that?
For you know what an athletic freak is?
Yes, I get what you're
Relax,
saying.
relax. And then Trace Mack, a kicker. It's amazing. We rarely see that. At least in the sixth round. Normally they're undrafted.
Yeah.
A C, the C minus. It wasn't anything special though. Just
Yeah, exactly. That's how I'd say. Not bad enough where they should be graded poorly, but not good enough to really be above that C rating. And now heading to the NFC East, we are going to start here with the Dallas Cowboys, with Caleb Downs being, my opinion, probably the steal of the draft. As I said, we were going to get to that later. Then followed by Malachi Lawrence, Jay Sean Barham, Drew Shelton, Devin Moore, LT Overton, and Anthony Smith. This is an A plus draft. I mean, the fact that the Dallas Cowboys were sitting at pick 12, their division rival, New York Giants, are sitting there at pick 10. And the Cowboys or Giants, my opinion, were ending up with Caleb Downs because we all kind of knew that the in-between team, the Miami Dolphins at 11, were going to either go tackle or receiver, and they go tackle with Caden Proctor. The Giants go get Francis Mayuaga out of Miami, and this leaves Caleb Downs available at pick 11. The Cowboys waste no time, trade up with the Miami Dolphins, and go get him. We've seen reactions online from Giants players, such as Malik Neighbors, crashing out over this, being like, I don't get it. Why would we take a guy that we, and he also said this about Arvell Reese as well, who will get to their draft obviously soon. But Malik Neighbors was very upset that they took two guys he believes really don't have a place on the team, that there's guys in those positions already. And safety is a huge need for the Giants, and they let probably the best safety, not probably the best safety in the whole draft, and could possibly be one of the best safeties in the NFL next year, go to their division rival. So I give this an A-plus draft just because you get a guy like Caleb Downs when you really shouldn't have at pick 11. And LT Overton in round 4, I think, is also a solid steal for them. He was exceptional, in my opinion, at Alabama. And to go to round 4, I thought he at least should have been maybe a round 3 pick. And Malachi Lawrence was the interesting pick here. They could have taken, I want to say Cassius Howell was available, and I want to say, I'm pretty sure he was. He went round 2, so yeah. And they go with Malachi Lawrence. Maybe Jerry Jones knows more than me. That's why he's in his position. But they address their needs with that edge pick, and I just think, yeah, this is an A-plus draft because you took a guy that realistically you should not have had.
as much as I don't want to say it, I'll give him an A minus. Caleb Downs getting him at pick 11. It's definitely a steal. The Giants could have blocked them from having him, which I thought the Giants were going to do. Like the same situation with Micah Parsons. It's the same thing all over again. Caleb Downs is that kind of athlete. But the Dallas ends up getting him. So Malachi Lawrence, like I said before, athletic freak. I'm not going to say freak. Athletic freak at UCF. But UCF doesn't really play anybody. So that's the one issue with why it could be a reach, could not be a reach. LT Overton, like you said, could be a steal in round 4. But A minus. Dallas is a good draft.
Yeah, and before we head to the Eagles, who we'll be talking about next, I just want to kind of go back to Trace Mack. I did look up his kicking stats. Never over 90% from field goal percentage, so very interesting that he was even drafted. But good for him. Hopefully his career...
Wait, extra point or field goal?
Field goal percentage. He was never near 90. It was always like almost 70. He was at like 81 was his highest. So that's why I'm kind of intrigued that they took him. But we'll see how he pans out in Green Bay. Heading to Philly, who had one of the most interesting first rounds, and we'll also be talking about that when we get to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mekhi Lemon in the first round, Eli Stowers, Markel Bell, Cole Payton, Micah Morris, Cole Winisky, Uar Bernard, and Keyshawn James Newby. I mean, personally, I want to give it a bit of a higher grade just because of the story that we all know happened with them, but I don't think we could really factor that in. I'll go a B. I don't want to give it higher than a B just because of the theatrics that were behind the picks. But Mekhi Lemon, obviously the best receiver that was available still on the board, and they get him at pick 20. We saw the huge controversy that happened with the Steelers being on the phone with him, and then the Eagles jumping them in their own city and selecting him. But I think this is a great pick purely off of A.J. Brown is most likely a New England Patriot, as we all know. So you draft his replacement. Eli Stowers as well. Dallas Goedert is getting up there in age. Eli Stowers, I think, was definitely the best tight end outside of Kenyon Sadiq in this draft class. So you get him in round 2. And then, my opinion, the probably steal of the entire draft, if it pans out, is Uar Bernard out of Nigeria in round 7, pick 251. This kid has never played football in his life, but I forget the exact story. He didn't go to the combine, but he did the combine test, is my point. And like exceptional on every single athletic NFL test, like off the charts. And the Eagles use a round 7 pick, which most teams look at as kind of useless, to just say, hey, let's see if those tests were right. And I think that's where we always just see, as we said earlier, Howie Roseman being a genius.
Such an Eagles pick.
Yeah, makes that pick, and it could really end up being the steal of this entire draft.
It's such an Eagles pick. They did the same thing with what's his name, who's their left tackle, by Mailata, where no one knew who this guy was, no one knew what he was, and they took Mailata. But Makai Lemon, he fell to 20. Players fall all the time. Maybe it was because of people didn't like what they saw in interviews. Maybe it's because teams just had needs to fill, and he just ended up falling that far. But they ended up jumping the Steelers. Like we all know the story about what happened. They take AJ Brown's replacement. AJ Brown's most likely going to be traded, and then Eli Stowers. Simply, Dallas Goedert has 1 year left, so he's projected to be the starter after next year. But grade, I'll give him a B. Wasn't anything too special, but yeah.
Yeah, moving on to the Washington Commanders, we see them go with Sonny Styles, Antonio Williams, Joshua Josephs, Katron Allen, Matt Gulbin, and Ethan Kalakmanis. And I'd give the Commanders a B as well. The Commanders address a major need at linebacker, obviously with Bobby Wagner. I don't even know realistically if he's even still on the Commanders. I think he is. But
I think he is, yeah.
he is old. He's 35 years old, and you draft now a guy that could be mentored by Bobby Wagner, one of the best linebackers of his generation. And Sonny Styles is hands down the best inside linebacker in this draft class. He is going to be amazing, I think, for the Commanders. And kind of another situation like the Cowboys, the Giants also were interested in Sonny Styles like they were in Caleb Downs, people thought. And we see him go to another division rival.
Commanders, B minus. Like you said, Sonny Styles, it's a big need for them at linebacker. Even with Bobby Wagner, not really much depth there that they have. Bobby Wagner is obviously getting up there in age. Could be the possible replacement for him for the future. Was pretty good at Ohio State. Really shined at the combine and his measurements, which is what really made him rise. And Washington did not expect him to be there for 7. They pulled the trigger immediately. Antonio Williams, a good receiver from Clemson, nothing special, but they need receiver help besides Terry McLaurin. Katron Allen, surprised he fell to round 6. I thought he was a way better running back than that. And then, yeah, B minus. It was a solid draft.
Yeah, and moving on to now the last team in that division, the New York Giants. We see go with the shocking pick of Arvell Reese at number 5 in the first round. And honestly, I'd say a shocking pick as well, Francis Mayoga at pick 10. We then see them go with Colton Hood, Malachi Fields, Bobby Jamison Travis, J.C. Davis, and Jack Kelly. I still think this is a B draft, though. I don't think it's like outrageous that they took Arvell Reese and Francis. Realistically, these are two guys. Now, I will get to Francis after I talk about Arvell Reese. These are two guys, though, that are probably still the best at their position in the draft. So they took best player available, I think is realistically what ended up happening. They did not expect Arvell Reese to probably be there at pick 5. However, the way that he's been talked about now by John Harbaugh is that he's going to play weak side linebacker and inside linebacker. Why not just take Sonny Styles, who did that his entire collegiate career, and not a kind of, not project, but a very developmental type player in the sense of Arvell Reese was in between that and an edge rusher at Ohio State. And with Francis Mayoga, I think he'll be an exceptional tackle in the NFL if that's where we see him play. However, we have already heard Giants brass say that he might play guard, which I think this is then Eric Flowers all over again. And funny enough, they both went to Miami. So I think it'll be very interesting to see what the Giants do with these two players, and they honestly could derail their careers, I believe, if they play them out of position. Colton Hood, though, in the second round, I think is a great pick. Giants fill a need at corner. And Malachi Fields, a bit of an interesting pick, in my opinion, in the third round, as I thought there were some better receivers than Malachi Fields available, but still a great receiver that showed out at Notre Dame and had some flashes. What do you really think about this whole Giants draft class? I would say a lot of people are interested to see what the Giants do with these picks.
Look, as we said last week and the week before, I'm a Giants fan. Not being any bias here, I'm giving it an A minus. For the sole fact that they filled every single need that they had. Arvell Reese, like we have edge linebacker. He plays everything. The Giants did not expect him to be there at pick 5, and they kind of just pulled the trigger when they saw he was dropping. He was the number one player on their board. So they were like, we can use this guy in multiple ways to stop the run. Not as good in coverage. Hopefully, the Giants with Tremaine Edmonds, maybe he could teach him a few things about coverage. This is mostly to stop the run and just being an athletic freak. Francis Mauigoa was higher on the Giants' boards than we thought. He's projected to play right guard for them. Giants guard history has been very bad. So Francis Mauigoa coming in, it's all to help Jackson Dart. Colin Hood, I didn't expect him to fall that far. I expected him to go a lot higher. He's a more physical corner that the Giants have been needing. Not that much physicality in that corner room, so he could win the starting job immediately. Malachi Fields wasn't that high on. We talked about it. A very slow, jump ball 50-50 catch receiver that could honestly win the X position for the Giants because they don't have that. They have a lot of small guys that can run routes. And then the rest were just little needs. Bobby James and Travis, he's a big guy. He can fill that defensive tackle role. Nothing special, though. But A minus, they filled the needs they needed to help Dart and to help the defense.
Yeah, I do like the A minus grade. I'm going to stick with the B, though, B plus, just because, as I said, I think it's just a draft class that could go very wrong very fast. Almost like this is very similar to Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal. So
let's not bring that up. Let's not bring that up.
It's very eerily similar. So we'll have to see what ends up happening by the time we see the season come around in September. But due to, as you see by the time, us giving you in-depth perspectives about each team's draft picks, we will be continuing our draft recap next week, going in depth of every single pick that each AFC team made. And to round out the show, though, as we try to do most times, we will be playing a game today, and we're going to see if Christian can name the last 10 winners of the Heisman Trophy. Obviously, kind of sticking with the college players heading to the NFL theme with the draft, we are going to name the people who won the Heisman. I'd say, actually, the last 10 years, all these guys have had pretty successful NFL careers.
2015, that was so long ago. I should know this. I know Lamar was the year after. I already know
Lamar
that.
was 2016.
Who was 2015? That's not Derrick Henry, is it?
It is Derrick Henry out of Alabama.
Oh, wow. All right. Okay. Lamar's 2016. After Lamar, it was Baker, Kyler. It was back Oklahoma's.
2017, 2018.
18. So 19 was Burrow.
Joe Burrow.
After Burrow, it was it Smitty or Young?
It was Devonta Smith in 2020.
Oh, okay. So Smitty was 2020. So Bryce Young was 21. He was after.
Bryce Young was 2021.
Oh, Jaden Daniels was 23. 22 was... Did Caleb Williams win one? Was he 22?
Caleb Williams did win it in 2022. And as
Jaden Daniels won 23. And then Hunter 24 and Mendoza 25. Wow.
Yeah, wow, you got that. I thought 2015 maybe should have gone back a little bit further.
I was very surprised.
Yeah.
I didn't think... Well, actually, no. I knew everything mostly. The 2015 with Derrick Henry was a complete guess. I knew he won it. I just didn't know when.
Yeah, well, I mean, you did that pretty quick, and I would say I probably would have gotten all these guys, but not in order. I would have started naming them, and you would have just given me the years. But yeah, that was great, and you did.
Well, Bryce Young and Smitty, I thought they could have been either one, so I really didn't know.
Yeah, obviously, I would say I knew Joe Burrow was 2019, and I think I knew Lamar was 2016. But that is going to do it for episode 6 of SpitBallin. As I said in the beginning of the episode, you can listen to SpitBallin at most places you find podcasts, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok under the handle @PodSpitBallin. Look out for next episode next week, where we'll be detailing every single draft pick by the AFC. And Christian is going to leave you with one last spitball, as we always do.
I think Jeremiah Love will have over 1,000 rushing yards.
And as we always leave you with, keep spitballing, everyone.